Hello and welcome. So in this video we are connecting Python with a SQL database. In specific, we are using Sqlite, which is as of today the most used database system in the world. So without you even knowing, you have highly probably used it in your life using your smartphone, browsers and other applications. Sqlite is both very easy to access with Python and is very slim, which makes it perfect for beginners, but is also a good choice for intermediate or advanced users. So definitely check this out. It doesn't matter where you plan to work, finance, data science, analytics, you will need database knowledge 100%. So first of all, some good news for you. If you have Python on your system, you automatically have Sqlite as well, as it comes with the standard Python library. So the only thing what we need to do is to import Sqlite 3. Now we want to establish a connection to a SQL database. So I'm just creating a variable here, connection, use Sqlite 3, connect, and here I have to define the name of my database. So let's just take an example here. We are just taking our database and use .db as the file extension. As this database is not yet existent, a new one will be created by that. So you can also connect to an already existing database by just using the name of the existing database. So let's execute that. And now I want to move around in this connection. And to move around in this connection, or in this database to be more specific, I have to create a cursor. So we are just establishing a variable here, cursor, and use connection.cursor. And with that, we have created a cursor object. And with this cursor object, we can execute SQL statements. And SQL is a programming language of its own, right? So in case you have no knowledge in SQL, that's no problem. So just accept it as it is. I'm just using some very simple SQL statements here, but don't worry if you don't have SQL experience yet. That's absolutely no problem. But before we are using SQL statements, I want to give you a brief overview of the Sqlite Datatypes, because you need that to understand the next steps. So let's just write it down here, Sqlite Datatypes. So the first one is integer. And if you know Python, you know integers. So these are just full numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Then we have real numbers, which are in Python float numbers. So just decimal numbers. Then we have text, which are just the equivalent to strings. And we have blobs or blobs, which are just binary large objects. So what do I mean by that? So you can imagine, for example, video files or images and stuff like that. And last but not least, we have null values, which are kind of self-explanatory, right? Okay, so that's already it. These are the Sqlite data types. And we need that for the next step, because in the next step, I want to create a table in our database. So right now, our database is empty, right? So to have a good overview of your databases, I recommend you to install a database browser, and I will link that in the video description. So let's take a look at that together. So this is DB browser for Sqlite. And what this application is doing, it gives us a user interface for our database, right? So you can have an overview. So if I'm opening a database here now, so we are getting our database, picking that and open that, we can have a look at the database structure. And as I said, the database right now is empty. Can I enlarge that? No, I have no idea how to do that. But doesn't matter. I hope you can see that. But essentially you see that we have 0 tables. So there's nothing in our database right now, right? And we want to change that. So let's create a table. And to create a table, we need to use our cursor and execute, and now we have to provide a SQL statement. And to create a table in SQL, we're just using create table Then we have to define the table name. So let's just take the classic example, employees. And now we have to define the columns of this table. And in SQL, you also have to define the data type of this column. And we have all data types here, right? So let's just take name, surname, and salary, right? So first one would be the name. And the data type would be a text value, right? It's just a simple string. So we're just taking name as the first column, then take the surname as the second column, and the same logic, so text again. And we are taking the salary now, and the salary is a real value, right? So you might know that. So if you are getting paid out, you have like a decimal number there, right? So this is not an integer, but a decimal number. So we can just define real here, right? And that's already it. So we can execute that. But very important, we have to commit that to our database. So we are just using connection.commit to make these changes visible to our database. Now let's quickly check the DB browser again. So let's open our database. Take a look at the database structure. And now you see we have a table employees, and we see our columns and the type of the column text, and real, right? So what would be the next step? We want to insert values to this table. And the logic is pretty much the same as before. We are still using the cursor and then just execute a insert statement in SQL. So we are again using cursor.execute, and now we are inserting. Again, this is SQL language again, insert into, and then we are defining the table name, employees. Then we are providing values. And the first one, and this is the same order as the columns. So the first one, let's just take Maria. Here's the name. And very important, when we do that, we have to use those quotation marks here. Maria, her surname, let's just take Mayer. And she's a data scientist and earns 100K. Okay, so yeah, with that, we are inserting values to this table. So let's execute that. And again, we have to commit this. So let's do that. And now we have those values stored for this table. So we can again take a look at the browser, open up a database, our database, and now we see the same again, but if we are browsing the data, we see Maria Mayer, who's earning 100K, right? So yeah, now we are getting to the part where we are requesting data from a database. So we want to have this Maria Mayer and her salary from this database. So imagine we have like a million entries and we want to see what's inside a certain table. So this is what we are doing now. We are requesting or querying data from a certain table. And again, the logic is the same. We are still using cursor.execute. And now we are just taking a select statement. Select star, by the way, select star from is probably, if someone has basic knowledge in SQL, he knows this statement. Let's call it like this. So we are selecting star, so select star means select all columns from, and then we are just naming the table. So with that, I just select all entries from the employees table, right? To make the result of this query visible for us, we can use cursor.fetchall to get all rows. So in this case, we have one row, but if you have many rows, you can also use cursor.fetch1 to get one row. Important to understand here, if I'm executing that again, I would get nothing because the request is already processed here, right? So what do I mean by that? If I'm executing the select all again and then execute that again, then I will get an entry here. And the same, or more important, for fetch one. So I can just go through every single row with that, right? So that's pretty hard to show right now because we have only one entry, but let's actually just take another entry here. So we are just executing this insert statement again. So we can take, I don't know, Max, I don't know a surname, Maxwell. Okay, so let's do that. Let's select all. And if we are taking fetch one now, we're getting Maria, right? But if I'm executing that again, I'm getting Maxwell, you know? So you can go through it row by row by just executing them again. What you can also do as an alternative, you can use a loop for I in cursor dot. So I'm just copy pasting that here, and then print I. So then you're getting every single entry here, right? So this is an iterable object actually. Okay, now let's mix it a bit up. So let's say you have variables in Python. So you have a name, for example, we're taking King. As a surname, we're taking Arthur, and he has a salary of 50K, right? So how can you store those variables now in the database? Well, we need our insert to statement again, so we can just copy paste that from above here. Then set the values to question marks. And then just take a comma after the SQL statement, and then we are providing a tuple with the variable names. So name, surname, and salary. Okay, so let's execute that. And let's see what we got by just using a select all statement again. So let's just fetch all here. And now you see we have King Arthur here in the last one. To make it even more fancy, we could use an input here. So provide a name. Provide a surname. And for the salary, we can use a typecast to float here of the input. Provide a salary, and then we can execute that. Then take, I don't know any names, so let's just take Anna. Anna White. And she makes 20K. And then we can again execute that, execute our select all statement, and now we have Anna White here. Okay. Last but not least, we could also use a constructor here, just to give you an idea. By the way, there's a much better practice to do that, but I'm just doing that with the constructor here. So I'm just using self, take the name, the surname, and the salary. Then take the name as the name, surname as the surname, and the salary as the salary. Have created a class, can get an instance out of that by necessarily having to define the name, which is Denzel, the surname, which is Sullivan, and the salary. Okay, he's making 1 million. And now I can assign name, surname, and salary to the instance name, the instance surname, and the instance salary. And again, I can use my insert statement and again use my select all statement, and again use my fetch all statement, and I have Denzel here as well. So yeah, that's it for this video, just to give you some ideas. So don't worry about this class thing. It's important that you understood the steps before that. I hope this was helpful for you. In the next one, we will take a look at getting data frames into a SQL database and also read SQL tables and store that in the data frame to do some data manipulations. Also very important. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next video. Bye bye.